The myeloma, there are a bunch of big, kind of unanswered questions. I'd say first and foremost is what is going to be our best combination of therapy for patients getting newly diagnosed therapy, whether they're transplant eligible or transplant ineligible. And we currently have quite a few, more than 5 large phase 3 randomized trials testing quadruplets, which is a triplet of a proteasome inhibitor, an immunomodulatory, and a steroid, plus or minus a CD38 antibody. So a quadruplet versus a triplet. We have 5 studies testing this. So it'll be really interesting to see, either in the transplant eligible population or ineligible, if the data shows that using a quad is better. Now, it's hard to say what does better mean. For a lot of us, that means progression-free survival. We'd like to see progression-free survival, mainly because overall survival in this patient population right now, hopefully, is 10 years or longer. And so if we have to wait for the overall survival results, it'll be a long time before we get any of these drugs approved. So we're going to try to do it with progression-free survival and also MRD negativity rates and also the rates of stringent complete remission. So one thing is frontline therapy. The second question, I think, for the next questions is what's best for early relapse? We will have, I think, a presentation at ASH data, I'm hoping, from the KarMMa-3 trial, which is actually a randomized trial of CAR-T cells versus a standard triplet in the 2 to 4 prior lines of therapy. And there's been a press release suggesting that the trial has met its endpoint, and we're all curious to see if the CAR-T cell as salvage therapy and the 2 to 4 prior line of therapy is actually better than the triplet. We'll see. I suspect it will be, and then perhaps now CARs will move from the truly relapse refractory patient then to the earlier lines of therapy, 2 to 4 prior lines of therapy. The next, I think one of the other unmet needs is what are we going to do in late relapse? How are we going to manage it when patients in the early lines of therapy, they get a CD38 antibody, they get a bispecific antibody therapy, perhaps for salvage, and they get a CAR-T cell therapy? What are we going to do for late relapse? And I think we're now just seeing emerging data of CARs and bispecifics targeting other cell surface proteins like GPRC5D and FCRH5. Those targets, I think, are also really good targets, and we're seeing very high response rates, even in patients having received prior BCMA-directed therapy. We also have novel CELMoDs that are being developed, and I'd say it's going to be combination therapy that's going to really work in the late line setting. And the other class of drugs that I'm really looking for are the allogeneic CAR-T cell sources, because those potentially can be off the shelf and can be used readily, even in patients who have more rapid progression.